right, how's everyone doing tonight? We're the Tripwire Podcast. I am Zach, FF Chalupa Batman on Twitter. Welcome. Hopefully, you guys have your championships wrapped up and you're going to the finals. But hey, we got a game coming up right now in a few minutes to get you ready. So we are part of the Triple Play Fantasy family, now part of the Fantasy Points Media Group. We stream every Monday night around 8 on Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook. We're getting you ready for the waiver wire. And honestly, next week is going to be our last week for the season. I'm just doing a wrap-up show. If you haven't already, subscribe to the Triple Play Fantasy YouTube channel. Just hit that subscribe button, like the video as well. Follow us all on Twitter. It helps us out a lot. We have a lot of great content on there as well. And how are you doing tonight, Toby? Hopefully your semis went well for you.
They did. I'm doing pretty well tonight, though.
Awesome. Good luck in the finals then. And then we have a very special guest tonight. He is the host of one of the best Dynasty and one of my favorite Dynasty podcasts. We have John Bauer at the Bauer Club on Twitter. How's it going, John?
Hey, what's up, guys? That intro, the music and the video, the way it was put together, that is fantastic. I gotta give you guys a round of applause. It makes ours look like absolute garbage. So thank you for that.
I can't remember who did it because our fearless leader David put all this stuff together, but I can't remember who made it for us. But yeah, it's fantastic. We got a lot of upgrades this season. We got a lot of exciting stuff coming, but I appreciate it. But no, we love your show with Dynasty. Now we're predominantly a redraft show talking about the waiver wire. So we are going to cover the waiver wire today, like we always do. And then towards the end of the show, the last half, we wanted to talk about some Dynasty as we kind of now get ready for the 2022 season. Since honestly, most of you, by odds of process of elimination, are probably out of the playoffs at this point, which is unfortunate. Hopefully you made it to the final and we helped you along the way. But hey, we're just playing a numbers game at this point, and we want to try to help as many people as possible. So we'll get right into it for the Week 17 waivers. So we're looking, again, as always, ESPN leagues. They're rostered in less than 50%. So there's not a whole lot this week, which is expected. We're going into the final week here. Hopefully your team's already kind of set for you, but we've had a lot of COVID issues over the last week or so. They've already started again today. We have a lot of injuries going on. So looking at the quarterbacks, just want to kind of go through the list real quick, see if anyone stands out. We have Tua Tagovailoa, who's playing tonight in a few minutes. He has Tennessee next week at Tennessee, 49.9% roster, so just sneaks in under that 50%. We have Carson Wentz at Las Vegas at 41.6% rostered. Justin Fields, who was injured this past week, we're not sure if he'll be back yet, but he's been pretty dynamic when he plays. He's got the New York Giants next week at 23.4% rostered, and then Trey Lance versus Houston, 4.8% rostered. He just squeaked in as we found out Jimmy Garoppolo has a pretty significant hand injury in his throwing hand. So, John, do you trust any of these QBs to start for you in your finals, or are there anyone here that maybe is like a COVID backup where you just want to roster another, maybe a second or a third quarterback, whether that is to play some team defense against your opponent or just kind of cover yourself?
Trust is such a hard word here in fantasy football, especially the last few weeks. Like what we record right now might be completely useless in an hour with all the COVID news that we're constantly hearing about. So looking at this list of quarterbacks, Justin Fields, he's, typically we talk about an upside play, especially in a one quarterback league. But as we know, he missed this past week, and there is the concern with the ankle injury. Does he come back? Is he 100%? Over 50% of his starts so far this season, he hasn't been a top 24 quarterback. So I can't feel comfortable putting a player like that in my championship lineup. So for me, Justin Fields is out. Carson Wentz, he has a nice matchup against the Raiders. They just got hit with the wave of COVID on the defensive side. I think 5 or 6 defensive players are now on the COVID list. My concern there is, while it is a nice matchup, is it a Jonathan Taylor day? And most of the time, the answer to that question is yes. And because of that, I think his upside's capped. So I'm going to get away from Carson Wentz. So the two options we have left here are Tua, who I like a lot. And for him, 2 touchdowns in 3 of his last 4 games, going against a Tennessee defense next week. They've given up some points to the quarterback, and we haven't seen Tua with a full complement of receiving options, but hopefully this tonight against the Saints and next week against the Titans, we see Parker, Waddle, and Gesicki. So he would be an option. I would feel confident with him. And then Trey Lance, the upside in 3 halves of play. where he started against, who was it, Arizona, and then played half against Seattle. He had 23 rushing attempts. So the upside is there. While they might not have a ton of passing attempts, Trey Lance is somebody that if you need points, if you have guys that are out, if you need to hit that ceiling play, he's somebody that I'm going to throw in there.
Perfect. Yeah. To me, Trey Lance feels like that glory play of like the projections are not in your favor. It's not even close. Maybe you're dealing with a rash of injuries, like you said, and you just need to go all upside. I think that's Trey Lance, but he could also be all downside too. So a lot of risk reward. But hey, that's exciting when we get into the finals. Awesome. So moving on to running backs, there's a kind of a wide range here. So we have Rashad Penny, who's shockingly still 44.4% rostered versus Detroit. So to me, he's a must pick up. Spend whatever you got to. Maybe we have Justin Jackson versus Denver, 42.7% rostered. He just had an incredible game, but we expect Eckler to clear, but we don't know at this point. And Boston Scott at Washington, 13.1% rostered. Kenneth Gainwell at Washington, also going against Washington, 10.2% rostered, both with the Phillies. Since we expect Sanders is definitely out, we found out today, and we expect Howard is probably out. And then Dare Agumbawale of Jacksonville at New England this week at 0.2% roster, so he's available everywhere. Tobe, I'm kind of really curious with specifically the Eagles guys. Is there one you favor over the other? Would you try to pick up both? Kind of how are you handling that backfield since they've been amazing in the running game as a team, but how do you feel about both of them?
I feel pretty good about both in a sense. I feel safer with Boston Scott. I think even when we saw Sanders miss early in the year, even when Howard was getting work, Scott was still readily available, and we didn't see much of Kenneth Gainwell. We've been all year on this Kenneth Gainwell train since the preseason, since first 3 weeks, we're telling people to stash him and stuff like that. And I think that trains just burn out. But I do think Kenneth Gainwell has a floor for a PPR standpoint as a flex play. But I think Boston Scott sees more of your goal line role. He's been pretty productive in the touchdown since this year. So I think I'd give the slight edge to Boston Scott, but I think both of them have pretty decent floors this week.
Awesome. Yeah. I think Dari's kind of that sneaky pickup just because he saw a ton of work once Robinson unfortunately went out with the Achilles injury. And New England looks like a horrible matchup, but we just found out a few key guys today are going on the COVID list. So again, John talked about it a few minutes ago. We're trying to give you as much up-to-date information as we have right now. It could change within the hour. It could change tomorrow. But that's where you really need to watch these matchups because what looks like on paper is a terrible matchup could be a phenomenal matchup. I mean, look at tonight. The Saints are playing. They're typically a really bad run defense to play against, but they have so many COVID issues and injuries right now. You might actually like playing against them. So keep an eye on that. And before we move to receivers, we got a lot of shout-outs going on. So we got Jacob. Looking good, boys. Great to see John on the show. We got Kevin, Coleman, John. Hope you're doing well, my friend. Good to see you guesting again. So I think this is, you said your first guest appearance in a while.
Yeah, I shut it down, but I wanted to get back in the guesting arena with you guys. So I was excited to jump on with you, but now that I see Kevin's in the chat, I might have to jump off here. Something came up. I'm sorry.
We feel honored that you're able to join us. We appreciate it. We got our boss, David. Apparently JB's the spirit animal. And then we got Ben just saying what's up and hope everything's going well. So thanks for watching, Ben. And we appreciate it. Yeah, if you guys have any questions, feel free to comment. Unfortunately, Twitter still doesn't work with that. So hop on the YouTube link and comment away, and we'll try to answer any questions you have. But then we're moving on to
really quick
yep,
on Justin
sure.
Jackson. Austin Eckler was activated this evening off
Perfect.
the COVID list. So that kind of spoils that one for anybody riding him last week in the semis.
Yeah. So I still wouldn't mind picking him up just in case, if you can just get him for free, if you have the space. But yeah, he definitely would no longer be a priority with Eckler coming back. But that's great.
Is there any running back that you would hold him? Like, would you keep him over one of these guys on the list or no?
He'd now fall to the bottom of the list for me, just the fact that Eckler's back. Okay. But if you have an empty spot and all these guys are gone, I mean, it doesn't hurt to stash them just in case. I mean, anybody can tweak an ankle in practice. So you never know. So moving on to wide receivers, definitely not as deep as we've seen most of the year. We have KJ Osborne at Green Bay, 30.2% rostered. Looks like Thielen might be shutting it down for the season, or at least for tomorrow, for next week. Joshua Palmer versus Denver, 4.3% rostered. He's still viable since Mike Williams is definitely missing next week. Braxton Berrios versus Tampa Bay at 3.6% rostered. And then Isaiah McKenzie just going crazy last week. This week he gets Atlanta at 0.3% rostered. So, John, do any of these wide receivers make it into like maybe a flex spot for you this week? Or are these just some guys to put on your bench as depth, as we've kind of talked about this whole COVID and injury situation?
I thought I was going to get off easy because earlier, looking at the list, I was like, okay, KJ Osborne, really no impact. Well, minimal impact if Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson are active. Josh Palmer, same thing with Keenan Allen, Mike Williams. Braxton Berrios if Jamison Crowder's active. So it was going to be an easy, none of these guys really intrigue me. But now, Adam Thielen, like you said, he might be shut down here. Mike Williams, still on the COVID list. Jamison Crowder, who knows really what's happening with him. Isaiah McKenzie, I know you mentioned him, and I know we saw that splash game last week. There was a lot of excitement there, but that's one that's just a little too risky for me. So this comes down to upside versus a little bit more stability in the position. So as a flex play, I like Braxton Berrios a lot if Jamison Crowder's out. His target share triples whenever Jamison Crowder's out, goes from 7% to 21%, averages around 10 PPR points per game whenever Jamison Crowder is not active. So again, it's not a sexy play. There's not a lot of upside. So if I'm just looking for that 10 to 12 points, Braxton's a good plug and play there. But for me, between Osborne and Palmer's going against Denver. I know Mike Williams is out. I'm going to be tempering my expectations a little bit with that one. I think the upside play here, and it shows you that people somewhat agree based on the rostership here. You said 30% for KJ Osborne, 21% target share prior to week 16 when Thielen is not in the lineup. This is a game where I think they're going to have to put up points to win against Green Bay. So KJ Osborne, he would be a guy out of these options that I would feel somewhat comfortable flexing. And I was trying to find anybody else lower in the list, like less than 5%. It is ugly, and rightfully so. Anybody worth rostering for the most part is already on a roster. But yeah, KJ Osborne, he's a name that I think people should look at.
Yeah, no, I agree. The one McKenzie somewhat piques my interest just because of the matchup with Atlanta, and due to their vaccination status, we know that Beasley can't play this week, and we know that Gabriel Davis can't play this week. So you're looking at Diggs, who will probably get matched up as not that Atlanta's that good, but he'll see their top corner most likely. And then Emmanuel Sanders just doesn't seem like the same Emmanuel Sanders since he's been injured. So I wouldn't expect an 11 reception, 12 target game from McKenzie again. But like I said, if you're desperate and it's a deep league, I think he's probably the easy. Him or Berrios are probably the two easiest ones to pick up in the deepest of leagues.
I think Berrios will have the better game script.
Yeah, he definitely has the PPR. And yeah, Tampa Bay has been giving it up a lot to slot receivers, and that's kind of where they funnel their defense to. So it does look like an ugly list.
I'm still mad at Berrios because I missed my prop by 3 yards with Berrios last weekend. So I'm still mad at him, but he still has upside.
So you can't play with emotion. You gotta play with logic.
It was sad that we're talking about these guys and we're looking at Berrios and he's 3% or 3%. And I had to plug him into several of my deeper dynasty leagues last week. So I'm like, oh man, like that's how ugly it was. We're talking about these 3% guys and they were in several of my lineups. So just people need to be listening to this right now.
Yeah, and now Dynasty is a little bit different than redraft when it comes to the waiver wire scraps, if you will. But yeah, the fact that Berrios is still available there, and then you had to play him, like it does tell you how crazy it's been this season.
Yep.
And then moving to tight end, which honestly this is probably the roughest we've had tight ends for a while. We had a good streak where there does always seem to be like 4 or 5 to look at. But this week we got honestly Cole Kmet versus the Giants. 36.6% rostered, and then Gerald Everett versus Detroit, 17.3% rostered. So for me, Kmet has had a 18.4% target share over the last 3 games, which you like to see if you're your tight end. At least 5 targets over the last 5 games. His downfall, he has not scored a touchdown all season, and Jimmy Graham just keeps vulturing them. I like the matchup against the Giants. maybe this is the week that Kmet gets a touchdown, but you definitely don't have touchdown upside with Kmet, which is what you're looking for in your tight end. Typically, he kind of seems like that, like safe but low floor, just with some of that target share. And then we have Gerald Everett, who gets a great matchup versus Detroit. His last 3 games, 10 receptions on 11 targets, so 13 3% target share, so much less target share, but you still like to see those numbers. And he's got 2 touchdowns. In the last 2 games, he's had 60 and 68 receiving yards. So he's been playing well, even though that offense has been kind of stagnant. Honestly, I think Everett probably has more upside than Kmet, but I don't really feel comfortable playing either of those guys in my finals. But, I mean, if you're desperate, I think those are really the only 2 that I saw on the waiver wire, unless you guys saw somebody else that really kind of stood out to me. I mean, you have RSJ getting the
I don't
Eagles.
want to play a football team player right now.
Neither do I.
And he's not even getting more work than John Bates.
Correct.
He's running similar routes. The route participation is somewhat close, and John Bates is actually getting the down the field shots. When I mentioned Braxton Berrios, I stuck RSJ in a few lineups, and well, you can tell how those teams did. They did not advance into the finals. His performance was not helpful at all.
No, so leave it to the Washington football team to ruin the Eagles' tight end streak.
I think I'd still beat the Cameron Brate drum this week. Again, I beat it last week
Yeah,
just
so you
for a
called it last
touchdown
week?
upside. We don't know if Evans is going to play. We know Godwin's not going to play.
He's on the COVID list, so
yeah,
he
Evans
probably
on the
won't
COVID
play.
So, I mean, if they're down those 2 guys again, he's going to see a fair share of targets. And Brady likes to target in the red zone. I think Brate had like 3 or 4 red zone targets on Sunday. So I like Everett's matchup too. The linebackers from Detroit don't cover really well, so I could see it being a good Everett game. If you somehow made it to the championship with the Kelsey or Waller team these past few weeks, props to you, but these are some names that you could muster up and find.
Perfect. All right, so before we move on to defenses, I just want to talk about Monkey Knife Fight real quick. So we've been talking about them all season. So if you have not tried it yet, I mean, at this point, what do you got to lose? You're probably not playing fantasy anymore. So why not have some fun, make some prop bets, make some money. If you are a first-time user, sign up using code TriplePlay. Monkey Knife Fight will match up to $100 of your first deposit. Minimum deposit of $10. So hey, that's just extra free money. Have some fun. It's not just football. They pretty much have every sport that exists out there. You can make some prop bets on, pick who's going to score touchdowns, who's going to score more points. It's a lot of fun. It's really easy. You don't have to risk a lot of money if that's not what you want to do. You just want to get a little extra action in the game because your teams aren't in it anymore. Check out Monkey Knife Fight. You won't be sorry. Just remember to use code TriplePlay. All right, DSTs. Again, not great this week. So what I could find under 50% with some decent matchups, we have the Cleveland Browns. They get Pittsburgh. I'm sorry, John. 39.2% rostered, and then the Chicago Bears get the New York Giants at 12.9% rostered. So I guess for both of you, I will start with Toby. Do you have a favorite of those 2, or did you find someone else that you like even more than that?
I think it's the Bears. I mean, they've been getting pressure at a high point. The quarterback's going to suck either way with Glennon or Jake Fromm. We could see them create some turnovers. I mean, Robert Quinn has 17 sacks now on the season, so he's been getting pressure all season. So I could see a good sack number and a couple turnovers from this defense, maybe even a touchdown.
I was just going to say, I agree with Toby. I think Chicago's the play there. I know that Steelers offensive line has not been great. I get stuck watching them here locally every week. And Ben has not been fantastic, but the way this series goes, the game is in Pittsburgh. I expect it to be an absolute battle. You have the Browns who aren't playing well offensively. I think it's going to be a low scoring game all the way around. I talked about Jonathan Taylor getting a lot of touches for Indianapolis. I think Najee Harris is going to get about 30 touches in this game. And there's going to be a minimal opportunity for Cleveland to get those big play turnovers and pressure on the quarterback, which is going to result in sacks and points for your defensive team here. And for the Bears, just like Toby said, I wouldn't be shocked. I don't know what the line is there on a Bears defensive touchdown, but I would not be shocked if they get a pick six, take it to the house, or a fumble off of a Glennon, mishap. I think there's a lot of upside there in that Bears defense. And I mean, like you said, Toby, that we're looking at Mike Glennon and Jake Fromm, who combined for 120 yards last week with 2 interceptions. They're not moving the ball.
It was ugly. No, I agree, guys. And they also are only 12.9% rostered in ESPN, so you can probably pick them up pretty easily. If you have any fab left, I would see whatever your opponent has. If they need a defense, try to just $1 extra on them if you need to, just to make sure that you lock up the defense that you want.
I'm kind of scared of the Pitt defensive or the Cleveland defensive call, just because they're not the healthiest on the back end right now. I mean, MJ Stewart has given up chunk play by chunk play, and he can't tackle very well. And if he's still out there, Deontay and Claypool could have a good day, even with Ben playing the way he is. I know Miles.
Ben get it to him.
I know Myles Garrett is a force, and Clowney might be back on the other side, but I just don't. I'm a Browns fan. I just don't trust it. I can't.
Fair enough. All right. So normally we talk about players you should drop. Honestly, at this point, any player that you're not going to start and you don't think is going to help your opponent, you can take them off your roster and fill them with some upside. Due to so many COVID cases throughout the week, though, make sure you have depth on your bench just in case, and you're constantly checking up on updates, checking who's available on the waiver wire. But we're not going to go through a whole list of who to drop because you should know who you need to drop at this point. So I want to turn the discussion to Dynasty now that we have John here. Like I said, we don't normally talk Dynasty on this podcast, but we're now going into, honestly, the 2022 off season. So I just had some questions for both of you, and just kind of see your guys' kind of thoughts and your, I guess, some ideas you guys had for it. So, John, how do you evaluate your roster as we now go into the off season? So this is obviously, you're already in a Dynasty league. You have your roster. What are you looking at to kind of determine your strategy for the off season?
Now, hopefully, your season comes to an end. If you were in the playoffs, fantastic. If not, you've had time to prepare for this. You've had time to look at your roster, evaluate it, compare it to the rest of the league. The first steps that you should be taking, again, hopefully this was done a few weeks ago or as the season progressed, but I think a good barometer is looking at your potential points, your points for not just your record, but then your all play percentage too. If you made it into the playoffs, great, but were you sub 500 for all play? And what I mean by that, for anybody that does not know, it's if you would play every single team every single week, and it calculates it. So did you just have some good luck in terms of variance against your opponents on any given week? There's a lot of things that you need to look at. It kind of helps you frame your dynasty team and what you need to be looking at going forward. And for me, I have a color-coded spreadsheet with all of my dynasty rosters, and it's broken up by position. Where are my strengths? Where are my weaknesses? How are my future draft picks looking? Going into the offseason, I want those insulated assets if at all possible. So we're talking about those rookie picks. We're talking about players that may have sustained injuries throughout the 2021 season that are going to see, if not stable value, a rise in value. I'm talking about players like J.K. Dobbins, heck, even like a Derrick Henry, even though he is older. And I know once you're 27 years old, certainly at the running back position, you might as well just be thrown away. But players that are just going to rise in value as the offseason progresses, especially if there's stability around their job security, which I think is so critical. And it's overlooked by a lot of people. People want youth, but what does their job stability look like? I mean, everybody was hyped about, Ronald Jones previously, before Leonard Fournette came in, and then how did that pan out? No offense to any of the Rojo truthers, just the first name that popped in my head there, but we see it time and time again. And in terms of evaluating my teams, it all starts for me, especially in super flex leagues, at the quarterback position. It doesn't have to be those young assets, but give me those Staffords, those even Kirk Cousins, Derek Carr is your quarterback 3, guys that I believe can sustain value beyond 2022. And I know that's going out a full year from now beyond this upcoming season, but that's where we need to be looking at and really looking at our rosters and seeing where we can improve, but also where we have some leverage. And okay, I'm not behind the 8 ball for this certain position. I'm not going to get price gouged because of it. So kind of staying ahead of the curve a little bit, but that's my 1 minute elevator pitch there. Quick spiel for you guys.
That was perfect. So Tobe, we're going in the NFL offseason, but that is not the Dynasty offseason. If anything, I think Dynasty is way busier during the NFL offseason than it is in season, other than maybe making some in-season trades. So how do you kind of prepare for that time? Like, what kind of research are you looking at? Are you following just strictly rookie stuff? Right? Like, I guess mostly for the newer people in Dynasty, like, how do you get ready?
I'm a big like rookie buff, so I like watching tape, rookie tape. I'll do a bunch of mock drafts, stuff like that. And I'm not. It helps me when I go into a rookie draft or so. But during the NFL offseason, I'm just looking for potential like free agent moves. If we see those, will it help their fantasy stock? I'm also looking at what they did the team before and what kind of new offense they're going into to see if they mesh well with that. If not, potential target share for like receivers and stuff, opportunity for these guys moving teams or and such. And then I think a big thing to pay attention to, especially from a dynasty standpoint, is coaching changes.
Come on, Toby, you're stealing one of my answers here. I was going to jump in with that.
Because I mean, new offenses. Some players just don't mesh well in that kind of offense. Like, I mean, I think Derrick Henry, he fits the perfect scheme in Tennessee, and they put it around him. And some of these moves that happen in the offseason with the coaches that come in and come out just don't benefit players. So I pay attention to that as well.
Sure.
I to echo all of that. Coaching changes, free agency. I look to sell speculation, and I always use Tyrell Williams as the example. A few years ago, there was hype around him. Where's he going to go? Leaving the Chargers, and then he goes to the Raiders. And it's like, if you would have moved him based on that hype prior to the signing, sure, you're going to miss some, but more often than not, I think if you're paying attention, the writing's on the wall in some situations, but that's always the example I look at. Like Toby said, rookie evaluation, combine, NFL draft. This is the time of year that whether you're doing the research for yourself or listening to people that will do the research for you, hint, dynasty theory, that's where the edges are gained. It's not disappearing for the next 4 months. Oh, here's the NFL draft, or 5 months. Here's the NFL draft. Here's my rookie draft. I'll see you all in September. We've had several league mates that say after the draft, all right, guys, I'll catch up with you next year. It's like, I didn't even know you were in this league still. So this is the time to pay attention and listen to folks like myself. And then you find gentlemen.
Awesome. Yeah. And so this was my first year playing Dynasty. So I was in 2 different leagues. One was a little more competitive than the other, both a lot of fun. And I think the biggest thing, and I kind of knew this before I had that experience, but just now having that experience, every little piece of news creates value one way or another for players and changes people's perception, good or bad. So it kind of depends on, one, do you roster that player or do you want that player? And where does that value fluctuate and how do you take advantage of that news? Because it could be a very small, like you talked about with Tyrell Williams, like, oh, you thought he was going here, then he went here. So you might have a very small window to capitalize on that value, or you could have a long time because there's so much rampant speculation. I mean, I don't want to get into legal issues of Deshaun Watson, I mean, talk about crazy swings in value depending on when we were talking about on the offseason. And was our news blurb about another case? Was our news blurb about, hey, this is happening, or we were speculating this? I mean, the range of trades with a first round pick or multiple firsts to like, you'll take anything you can get for them. I mean, it was crazy. And every manager plays their team differently, but that was kind of one of the things I noticed in my first year.
Even my guy back here, Calvin Ridley. I mean, is he going to retire? Is he going to come back? What's going to happen? Like you said, you're seeing a move for a late first. Heck, people will cash out for a second. Give me a player that's going to help me wrap up this season. The range of values is it's just all over the place. And that is what creates these edges that you can have over your opponent. So it's reacting without overreacting. And sometimes it's very hard to find that line.
Yep. And it makes every league unique because every team manager is going to value all of these players differently. So John, if you are talking to a newer dynasty manager, maybe they're going in their first offseason, they're about to do their startup at some point this offseason. What's maybe one piece of advice you'd recommend for them to kind of help them get set up for success to go into their first season?
Now, if this is your first startup, know your settings, know your rules, your scoring format, your starting requirements. It is so simple. But even me, and I'm in so many leagues, I have to reach out to Mitch or Dan, my co-host over at Dynasty Theory, and Mitch yells at me on a daily basis, I feel like, about several things, but specifically this. I'm like, hey, is this league, how is draft order decided? He's like, John, come on, man, what are you doing here? But just knowing those things, it's so simple, but you see people make mistakes. I had somebody one time, let's say it was the 4th round of the startup, they seriously jumped in and said, I didn't know this was tight end premium. And that impacts the way you draft. So it's so simple, but make sure you have a grasp on just your settings, and then also find a resource to help guide you, not make decisions for you, but just to make sure things are kind of kept in line. You're nothing's completely out of left field. You're not trading your first round pick for Joe Schmo or whatever the case may be, but just to kind of help you along the way. And then last thing, if it's your first dynasty league, you're in a startup, you're not comfortable with trades, make small trades just to kind of help you grasp the art of trading and the varying values. Because if you're looking at high value pieces, it might be the wrong move. It might be a misstep. And it's going to cripple you in the next few seasons. But if you're starting to move these smaller pieces, maybe it's a third round rookie pick for player X or whatever. Yeah, you're going to miss on several, but it's not going to kill your team. And I think that's important as well.
Awesome. And then, so this is for both of you guys. Dynasty has gotten a lot more popular over the last couple seasons, but redraft is predominantly the most popular format for fantasy still. So I think there's a lot of people that might be interested in Dynasty. And honestly, I think there might be some intimidation factor of they feel like it's a whole year thing, like you just talked about. You can't really check out. Maybe it feels daunting with, like you said, the trades and all of that. So I guess for both of you, why would you encourage someone to give Dynasty a try? At least try it one time just to see how it is.
I think it's just fun, more fun. It's more intriguing for the natural football fan because you can kind of go into a manager's sense and not just for a season of games when you're trying to hit on points all this time. In the offseason, when you go through trades, you talk to your other managers, and then you have a rookie draft where you can also trade your picks like they do in the real NFL draft. I think it comes to more of a real life NFL sense in a way, but it's still fantasy football.
Yeah, it just adds a different dynamic. I would say 90% of my leagues that I'm in are dynasty leagues. I have a few redraft leagues sprinkled in, but I'm not one of those people. Oh, dude, you got to play dynasty. It's got to be dynasty. If redraft is your thing, great. If kickers are your thing, if Linda's listening, fantastic, great. If you play with defensive teams, great. IDP, whatever. If that's your thing, do it because you enjoy it. But and that's it. That's exactly it. Just like Toby said, it's enjoyable. It's fun. And you're paying attention throughout the entire year. And there's all these different variables and different things, as opposed to, hey, jumping in August, doing my redraft draft with some friends, play for the next few months. Oh, here's the off season, nothing really to do. That's where Dynasty comes in. Feed that football addiction and keep going.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. And so, I mean, with that, we kind of are going to wrap it up. John, we really appreciate you coming on. Like I said, we feel honored that you were able to guest with us since you haven't been on a show in a while, someone else's show. But can you remind everyone where they can find you, and please plug any content that you want?
Yeah, this was a lot of fun. I was trying to not race through, but trying to get through my answers because keeping me to half an hour is a challenge. So the fact that we did it and we're able to get out here and watch Monday Night Football, I think your listeners will appreciate that. But yeah, this was a lot of fun. Find me on Twitter at the Bauer Club. Dynasty Theory every other Tuesday for the time being, 10 o'clock Eastern Standard Time on YouTube, Twitter. And then we also have our Discord, completely free. If you're looking to get in there, chat about fantasy football, life, whatever, we've had people jump in, say they use it as an escape because they have this going on in their personal lives. And that's kind of more important to me than anything else. It's like a community that we're building with fantasy football on the side. That's the way I like to look at it. But yeah, and we also have the Dynasty Theory Patreon, $5 a month, a lot of exclusive content. So if you're looking to expand your horizons, go from redraft to dynasty, kick things off, come check us out. Awesome.
And then I told Ben that I would ask the question. Now you don't have to commit to anything. But he mentioned that your workout habits have been lacking over the last few years. And as a proud member of the Fantasy Football Fit Club, he wanted me to ask you if you wanted to commit to a 30-day challenge. And I'm happy to commit with you. And we can see what we can do going into this new year if you'd like to. You don't have to commit, but.
No, you know what, Zach? I will commit, but I want to know what the parameters are. I want to leave my house as little as possible. So I think, like we talked about before the show, the eating habits are kind of what could really work for me. But no, let's connect offline. I would love to talk about that because my fat ass could use something. I'll tell you that.
No, we'll make it happen. I promise to make it easy. I do my workouts from home all the time, and just like you, I got the young kids, so we'll make it happen. So there you go, Ben. We got a commitment. Thank you. And then Toby, where can everyone find you, and What do you got going on this week?
Just Wallpaper Wednesday, as always. Z2 Fantasy on Twitter. I'll probably drop some IDP waiver wire ads like I did last week and the week before. So just look out for that.
Awesome. And then I have my weekly QB streamer article, QB and tight end streamer article with Fantasy and Frame. So this will probably be my last one this week as we go into the championship week season. So look out for that probably Thursday. And then I won't be doing any more beat the waiver wires on Sunday because we're done. But that's been a lot of fun. And so next week we will have one more show. No guest next week. We're just going to celebrate as a team, hopefully some championships with you all, and just do a little wrap-up episode as we go into the off season. But the shows don't stop, even if our show is going to be taking a little bit of a hiatus. Subscribe to the Triple Play Fantasy channel on YouTube. There's so much going on right now. We cover football, basketball, and baseball. And even though baseball's in the off season, we're pumping out tons of content for that. There's basketball content coming out all the time. We have an exciting interview. I believe it's going to be airing tomorrow as well for football. So make sure you subscribe to the Triple Play channel on YouTube so you don't miss any of that. And then also follow the show at the Triple R Pod on Twitter. You can follow all of us on Twitter as well. So we got FF Triple Batman, at Z2 Fantasy, and at the Bauer Club. So we appreciate it, guys. Good luck in your championship matchups this weekend. Hopefully you bring home some trophies. Have a good night.